It's Friday, April 25th, and I just filed a criminal offense report in the building behind me, the sheriff's office, against 10 county elected officials and against Brian Shrive, relating to them violating my rights under 2921.45 by inventing the Hicks Rule relating to making records requests, where Chris Hicks has to pay for redactions in records, which has no statutory support whatsoever, other than if I were requesting a body cam record, which is a specific exception in the law. I just did a brief interview with a nice sheriff's deputy. I am going to now let you listen to that interview in its totality. I recorded it, he recorded it also, and I want to make sure it is out there immediately, because you'll see that the sheriff's deputy mentions going to the prosecutor's office. Well, we know the prosecutor's office in Clermont County is crooked as hell, and Chris Stratton knows they're crooked as hell. But my allegation is against 10 county elected officials and Brian Shrive. So nobody ultimately, including Sheriff Stratton, should be part of this investigation or part of any prosecution. The sheriff's office should go get an outside investigator to investigate this immediately, because what is happening is illegal. It conflicts all of these people. I'm going to give you all this stuff, and I'm going to give you this memory stick when I'm done. Okay. I can find the memory stick in my pocket. And your name is Kidder, okay? Yes, well, you said hi to me, but I never had a chance. I was too concentrated on the camera.
That's okay. Yeah.
Okay,
nice
so nice to meet you. So I'm going to give you a bunch of background. I'm going to walk through something that I think is a violation, a misdemeanor violation of statute 2921.45.
Okay.
Okay. And I'll give you all this. You can, if you want to, I'm going to give you that. So if you want to write on it or anything,
okay.
You know, so it might make it easier. So here's the gist of what I'm alleging is, and I'll go through the history of this. So 2921.45 is a no public servant under color of the public servant's office, employment or authority shall knowingly deprive or conspire or attempt to deprive any person of a constitutional or statutory right. Are you familiar with that statute?
It's not one I'm commonly dealing with.
That's almost never, ever used. Okay, it's like if this case will be actually a great use of this statute.
Okay.
Okay, like a precedent-setting use of the statute. So, what has happened, and I'll walk you through it step by step, is I made request for some public records to 10 different elected official offices in Clermont County, including here.
Okay.
Okay? So 10 different, and they're all in here. Here's the 10, is in this.
Okay.
So what's happened is nobody's disputed that my public records requests are valid. They've not been denied. But what's happened is these 10 people, including the sheriff, who I know well, Chris Stratton, have conspired to prevent me from being able to get public records to which I'm entitled. And I'll take you through chapter and verse and examples and all the emails, everything's in here.
Okay. That
will break this down for you, okay? So, and what I did is, this example is on March 13th, I made a request to these 10 different offices, 10 separate requests. A request to Chris Stratton, a request to Bonnie BATCHLER, a request to, so these are this is an example of the request. They were all the same. This one is to Linda FRALEY. So the part that's a records request is right here. Email record request, okay? This is a record request for all emails to and from the following email addresses between the dates of March 1 and March 7th, 2025.
Not to interrupt you, sir, before we get too far into it, what were the records requests pertaining to?
What I just said. This is a record request for all emails to and from the following email addresses between the dates of March 1 and March 7, 2025.
Okay,
here, this is the Linda FRALEY example. L. FRALEY, FRALEY Linda.
I understand.
Okay, so that was the request. Okay, I even gave Supreme Court case law citation relating to the request.
Okay.
The way the request is formatted is directly per the Supreme Court case. So there's no ambiguity as to the validity of the request. It's a Supreme Court based thing. Okay. So
I sent those 10 different requests, and you would understand this, like I know what Mackenzie Clark here, because you guys have a very defined records function, so I know how these things get handled, and I know 10 different requests. I know if I send her 3 different requests, I'm going to get 3 different replies, as they come back. So, but that's the request for emails to and from the elected officials given address. So all 10 of the elected officials acknowledge the request.
Okay.
Whereas I only put the one example of Linda Fraley in here, actually on this memory stick, which I'm looking at, there's actually a PST file that has all the relevant emails. I don't know if you're familiar, when I say a PST file. So Outlook, like Microsoft Outlook. So Microsoft Outlook, the data files, the native data files are PST files.
Okay, I'm tracking.
And if you, there's one on there that'll have all these emails. If you click on it, like you take it to a computer, and if you click on it, it'll tell you have to open it from within Outlook, but you can open up, it's like open up a Word document, but you open it within Outlook because it has all the structure of the emails.
Gotcha.
Anyway, so those are the 10, here's all the acknowledgements. Bonnie Batcher, I'm writing to acknowledge, and it's specific to those requests, okay, 1 through 7. Chris Stratton, they all were applied. Each of the elected officials replied themselves. KAMPHAUS, Rudd, Fraley, ZURMEHLY, okay. CORCORAN, Painter, TEKULVE.
Okay.
Shrive as well. So Shrive replied for TEKULVE, okay. Everybody else, the elected official replied.
The civil.
Yeah, he's the civil prosecutor, okay. He's the guy. As a side note, when the Jesse Cramig stuff was going on and Chris Stratton got featured in the press for having done a petition, it was Brian Shrive who leaked it to the press to basically throw your boss under the bus.
I'm not familiar with the details of it.
So anyway, it doesn't really matter, but you guys were doing an investigation into Jesse Cramig.
I'm vaguely familiar with it.
Yeah, and then Stratton got in the press that he was, like what do you call it, like conflicted because he had done a petition for Jesse Cramig. Okay. And so because you ask yourself, I'm not going on a tangent, but how would the press know that somebody had done a petition for somebody? It's really an obscure piece of information. No, it's because it got leaked to the press. Okay, to undermine Mr. Stratton or Sheriff Stratton. But anyway, so he had respond for TEKULVE, okay, and then he responds on behalf of these people, he responds not to the individual request, but he puts them all together. So, you made all these requests, and then he demands that I pay $10,000 to $11,000 per week.
10 to 11,000.
Yeah, I'll show you this, or you can write on here. But I know I'm using it to look at it. But yeah, 10 to 12,000. I'm sorry, so $10,000 to $12,000 per week.
Did he state what those fees would be for?
For putting redactions in. Which, by the way, you might know this. You're probably not like, I sit around all day, look about what are the records laws. But you would have a sense of some of this, like just from being in law enforcement. So you can't charge people for putting redactions in things. Like there's statutory redactions, like people's social security number, stuff like this. Go ask Mackenzie Clark, right? Like, she all day you guys release reports where she or somebody puts redactions in them. You don't charge the people for them. In fact, the first and only thing that you can charge for redactions for is body cams, because they actually changed the law to allow that there can be a special charge for processing body cams. And you probably
wasn't it like $750?
Yeah, it's like ridiculous. By the way, it makes no. I realize you guys get overloaded with probably body cam requests, but they probably should have started with just having like a $50 flat fee or something, because that probably would have cut, like most of people wouldn't pay that.
I'm a road patrol supervisor.
Okay,
that's a bit.
But $750, So but just from that, it's the first area ever in public records law where you can charge the requester for the effort it takes to do the blurring and redactions.
Okay.
Nothing else you can do that.
Okay.
And it's a specific part of the statute. I printed out a copy of the whole statute as well. So anyway, so I reply to him basically asking, can I get then, $10,000 to $12,000, whatever that was, $10,000 to $12,000. I made 10 different requests. Can you give me the price? By the way, you're bullshit. You're trying to make me pay this, and there's no basis for this. But anyway, can't you give me a breakdown? Can't you reply to each request? Is it $50 for Tim Rudd and $200 and $3,000 for Linda Fraley? What if I wanted to buy some?
What's this mentioning of an outside law firm?
Because he's saying that they can hire an outside law firm to do this, and I have to pay for the cost of the outside law firm.
Okay.
There's no basis in that. We'll get that. That'll get all adjudicated. And by the way, everybody knows it, including your boss, knows that there's no basis for this. Okay. This is a ruse, okay, to keep me from getting records. So anyway, I asked him to break it down. I asked him whatever, and he then responds. I thought I put it in here. He just responds. I might have left that one out of here, but he responded basically like, "Just tell me, are you going to pay the money or not?" So I left that one out of here, but there's an email from him that says, basically just says he's not going to respond, and just, are you going to pay the $10,000 to $12,000 a week? Okay. Okay. So there's no basis for that. Like, let's say that I wanted to let's say it was even legit to charge people money for this. Let's say I wanted to say I made a request just to Chris Stratton, just for his emails. I have to pay $10,000 to $12,000 to get everybody's emails. I can't. So,
but this is just for Linda Fraley's. The 10 requests you sent out wasn't for all of their emails. It was just for.
No, each one of them got a request.
Oh, okay.
So there were 10 unique individual requests. They all got an email like this one, identical to this one.
I understand.
Then they all responded to the email. Okay. Yeah, like here. Here's Chris responding. Okay. Or Sheriff Stratton responding. Here's Bounty BATCHLER responding. I'm writing you to acknowledge receipt of your request. I will respond within a reasonable amount of time. Okay. That's a typical public records request, because legally you have to acknowledge the request. Sure. And then you say a reasonable period of time, and generally a reasonable period of time can be different based on what it is, but generally 30 days is the maximum. Okay, so he won't provide the records, okay? And I think
who's Mr. Shrive speaking on behalf of? Is that?
Well, he's the counsel for all these people.
So he's referencing that.
So once he starts responding for him, he's their voice.
And this is in all 10 subjects. He's referring to get those emails to you. It's for all 10 subjects. It's this fee.
Well, it's not subjects. It's 10 individuals, 10 office holders, but this fee, and then he's their counsel. So he's not supposed to. One thing is he speaks for them, and he's not supposed to be speaking without their consent. Like if you had a lawyer, and the lawyer said, oh yeah, well, let me use a police example. I don't know anything about police, but I watch a lot of TV. But it'd be like, oh yeah, we'll accept the plea agreement. It's like, no, the lawyer has to go get the okay of the client. Brian Shrive is not the elected official. He's the representative of the elected official. So, any event, so he, so when I asked him to break it down, this was his response. You received a response that, are you going to pay the cost of production or not? Okay, so that's the only option I have. Pay $10,000 to $12,000, which by the way is completely not valid. So then I reply to him in a bunch of mumbo jumbo like I would normally write, but I point out everything you're saying is bullshit, and you have a real live example that everybody knows is the body cam thing. Because the body cam thing, the law just got changed to allow the first and only time you can charge people for redactions, and everybody knows it. And by the way, if what you're trying to do to me was legal, why did they need to change the law for body cam charges? Okay, because apparently the law, according to you, already allows it. So remember, the things I'm asking for will be textual documents, like one of your offense reports, stuff like this. All right, so then I followed up with some of the elected officials just recently saying, hey, I never got, I can't get your individual response for your office, okay? So you with me so far?
I am.
Okay, now here's where it gets more fun, okay? Is we can look at the cases and stuff, because there's cases that I cited, there's some bullshit case he cited, but all these officials know this is a deal. It's a conspiracy of them. And I'll tell you why I know this, because now I have called most of the offices, the people that do the public records, and have them on audio, on there, including your boss, that knowing that they don't charge for redactions.
Okay.
So they have
And
established,
that's on the thumb.
yes, they have established a special Chris Hicks only rule, the only time ever, where any of these offices are saying that somebody has to pay for redactions.
Okay.
Okay, and it's some of the stuff is humorous listening to it, because the people that do the public records never would have thought like it was even an option. And then they get confused when I'm asking, because as you might know, it's just logical. You can charge people for things like 10 cents a page for a copy, or $3 for a memory stick. You're allowed to charge like just as incidental cost to the actual physical
You
copies.
were prepared to pay for that stuff. You weren't expecting this.
Yeah, but you don't have to, by the way. If you request, if an office can provide something electronically and you ask them to provide it electronically, then they have to provide electronically, and then there's nothing. The statute's specific as to what you're allowed to charge for. So like media, physical copies, stuff like that, is within there. Okay, so I called all these offices, so I called, these are the ones I called, Penny Freeman, who's the person who does the records for the common police clerk, Marsha Collier, who does the recorder, Chris Melman, who does the auditor, municipal clerk, Becky Wilson does the records for them, Mackenzie Clark, I talked to her, and then I actually talked to your boss, and he knows this is wrong. I actually think Chris is a good guy, and I think he hates a lot of this bullshit that goes on in Clermont County politics to his core. He knows it's wrong, and he should. I can't believe. I think Leahy would have just given me the records.
Yeah.
Because in the past, not to go on a tangent, but Leahy told me that his view of the political intrigue of the con crew was that if he got a request, his motto was just, we're going to respond to it if it was easy, before Linda Fraley or Jeannie Zoomer or anybody has a chance to call me up and try to convince me I shouldn't.
I see.
Just be like, I'm dumb. I just respond when somebody asks me. So then just as a side, they're not tied to offices, but Stephanie Height, who's the Board of Elections, because I just called her because they do a lot of record requests. She did say, when you listen to that one, there was a time when Brian Shrive had this idea of charging somebody else, but she's trying to get the records, but it never went anywhere.
Really?
Okay, and then the coroner's office. I just know the coroner's office. Deborah Hawkins. Just because I've requested records, and I know they do redaction in records, so I asked her, like, do you ever charge somebody for doing a redaction in a record? So then I sent this long note to your boss, to Sheriff Stratton, after the call I had with him, and copied Shrive on it, because I know that Chris knows that this is not legal, what they're doing, and he really so what my allegation is ultimately is that these guys know they are knowingly keeping me from getting public records. They are doing it by completely bogus things that they've invented uniquely for me. No other citizen in Clermont County is subject to this. Okay? And so they're all 10 elected officials and Brian Shrive. I'm putting forth an offense complaint that they're all in violation of the statute. They're all committing a third-degree misdemeanor right now.
Okay.
All 11. So there's 10 of them, enumerated here.
Okay.
Okay? And then Brian Shrive's right here. And so, by the way, because of Brian Shrive does this stuff and then he creates nightmares for people. Like he did, there was a case involving some records here, like the interviews and stuff, where he tried to get me sanctioned before in the court of claims, and it was Leahy was the client, and he never had even asked Leahy. So then Leahy was super pissed on, I never asked you to go, I never would have given you the okay to go try to get Chris Hicks sanctioned for something, and it's just like Shrive runs as a freelance, everybody's afraid of Mark TEKULVE, it's a...
Do you mind if I take a look at this?
Yeah.
So, I understand your complaint. I will certainly take a report. That'll get kicked up our chain of command, as all offense reports are. I could give you my business card with this report number on it. And you've obviously prepared this really well. I'll need to review that revised code. And all I can do is just document your allegations, your complaints, and that'll get kicked up the chain.
Okay, so I want to leave you with a few other things.
Okay.
Okay, before. So in here, when you kick this up your chain of command, by the way, this is, some of the offices have an actual public records policy, and you guys probably do. I just don't know what it is. You know, you probably have something written out. But Linda Fraley's office sent me hers. There's nothing in there about charging somebody for what now they're now trying to charge me for.
I understand.
And if you go look, they have their, just to give you a frame of reference, cost. You know, it's all things like, they don't actually charge for copies. You don't have to charge, okay? Any cost of copies, if there's like mailing charges, if you want it to be mailed to you, that's the only stuff you're allowed to charge for. So that's a policy, because it's referenced in here. By the way, everything except one thing I'm going to give you is on that memory stick, just because I forgot to put one on there. The PST of all the emails, so all 10 of the emails.
These are the emails that you have sent them, just for clarity.
And their replies.
And the replies.
And Brian Shrive's replies.
You just printed it out.
Any email that's referenced here is on there. And so probably, there might be some other emails, because any email I thought would be relevant, I put in a PST file. You know, but for example, here I only put the Fraley one. On there, all 10 individual emails are in there. You know, the one going to each.
Okay.
So those are all on there, and Shrive's emails. And all right, so, and then, but that's in a PST on there. But also on there is the recordings of all the calls that I've had. Okay. Also on there is a copy of this. It's in PDF format. If somebody wanted it in Word format, I'll send it to them. We'll work, you know. Okay. And so then these are also on there, but these are the cases that get cited in this. So this is the Supreme Court case relating to making requests for people's emails. Okay. It does not, because this was a case not on. This case, what got to the Supreme Court was not on somebody trying to charge somebody for it. It was a public office had denied a request that was just for, like, let's say I said, like, send me all of Deputy Kidder's emails from day 1 to day 3, and it got denied. And then so that ended up being a case that ultimately went to the Supreme Court.
Okay.
So it doesn't really it basically is like you just can't deny it. You have to provide the records. And by the way, if you look at this, just to be clear, nobody has denied the request. So it's that it's a valid request. I don't know if you're familiar with public records much, but
it's not something I deal with.
Okay, just to give you a framework. So if you're talking with your up the chain, is if you a typical response might be your request is overly broad. That means like it's too hard to figure out. Okay, your request is there's no record responsive to your request. We don't have anything, you know, that kind of stuff. So you're requesting us to create a record for you. You know, you can't. A public office doesn't have to create a record. So there's a typical set of responses, you know, that come into play. Well, so this one got denied. Somebody denied a request, and that's how it ultimately got to a Supreme Court thing.
Just to backtrack, when did you send the initial request?
March 13th.
March 13th. Okay.
So that's why I've waited, because the 30 days, like, you know, 30-day limit.
Understand.
But I never got a denial, anything, or any of these excuse type notes. Usually if somebody's trying to just, you know, they'll try to brush you off that way. You guys would have it's confidential investigatory records that we don't have to release until the investigation's over. Those are typical, you know, valid, you know, sustainable defenses as to why you're not providing something. There's no claim here that what I'm requesting is not a public record or I'm not entitled to it. There's just this out of the blue, Chris Hicks has to pay $10,000 to $12,000 a week.
I understand.
Okay. By the way, Mr. Shrive is not. He thinks he's very smart, but the dumb thing is, in that note, he said he estimated that across all 10 elected officials was 1,500 emails. So if you do the math, he's saying it's going to cost $6 per email to have somebody redact emails.
Did he reference that in his email?
Yeah, so he let me see if I find it real quick. So that's why he's picked such an absurd number that even if it were valid, it doesn't make any, it's clearly just meant to get me to try to go away. Okay, so here's, let's see if I can find it here. 10 to 12,000, let's work for the 1,500. Somewhere in here it says 1,500.
And the time frame that you,
March 1 through 7 was what I was, the request. I've done subsequent requests, but that's the request that I'm focused in on because it's the one over 30 days.
that's 2025, correct?
Okay, yes. And somewhere, I swear somewhere here it says 1,500. Or 1,500 per week, something like that. It's supposed to be, and then he's got this complete nonsense that my request would impede the efficient operation of government. Now, okay, if he wants that to be part of the public records law, that you can't make requests that impede the, oh, there's 1,500, okay. You know, I noticed this, I appreciate you seeing that. But it's like, okay, you're just making shit up. You're just completely making shit up out of the blue. Can you imagine that I made a request to Mackenzie Clark? I never met Mackenzie Clark, but she came back to me and said, "We're sorry, we've determined that your request will impede the efficient operation of county government, so we're not going to respond."
I don't think it
You
works
know,
that way for us.
so 1,500. Imagine if it was Channel 9 asking for records and you told them, that's going to impede our, but there you go, 1,500. So you do the math, it's over it's like 660 per email.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, 90% emails, if you handed me your phone and let me look at, well, you probably have more, but let's say Tim Rudd's office. Linda, there's nothing in their emails that's going to be, there's almost no redactions. You guys are going to have more because you have, names that you have.
Patrol requests.
And you have a lot of exceptions where you're required to redact stuff. Where the statute says, like, you need to redact social security numbers, where you would run into it more, something you might have in the record. So, but anyway, this is the Supreme Court case. This is like a layup case, and I can go pull 5 other cases based on this because it happens every now and then that it's not, this doesn't happen. But what happens is maybe some office denies a record request, and then somebody's going to go to the court of claims or something, and they look at what are the cases, So that's the Supreme Court case I cited. This is the case that he cited, which is not a Supreme Court case, but this is a case involving, this is how ridiculous this is, that the geomaps would be like, I went to the county engineer's office, and I can go get printouts of geomaps, or I can get them electronically or whatever, but I want the machine-readable geomaps from the system of the county engineer so that I can put them in a different machine-readable system. Okay, and that what happened was this person, they had a way to get these maps different ways, but they wanted them in a special way where they'd have to transform them into a different kind of record. Okay, and so then a court ruled that by the way, for doing this for a whole county, think of how much mapping there is, like in Linda Fraley's office, that if this person wanted them moved to a different format, it was okay that they charge them $2,000 to do that. This case has nothing to do with redactions.
That's what I was going to
It has nothing to do, and if you read this, it has something to do also with the data was somehow commingled in a software system that was copyright protected, and there's actually an exception in the public records law about if you happen to have, like, say some software you use has copyright protected or trade secret information in there. If I do a record request that, if you fulfilled it, would reveal to me copyright protected or trade secret information, say of the software vendor, you can deny that request. You're supposed to deny that request. But you understand what I'm saying? Because then I could try to figure out, you guys use Axon or whatever it's called for the body cam stuff. It's like, if I could do these requests, I can reverse engineer the Axon system, by claiming that because you use the software, I can get copies of the software.
I understand.
So that's what this has nothing to do with it. So that's
Have you requested emails like this before from these government agencies?
No, but another person has. So I'm waiting for them to provide me the information. Apparently other people can do it and they don't have the issue, only I do.
My question was going to be more along the lines of, is it common for Mr. Shrive to handle the communication for all these government officials?
It is when it involves me.
I see.
So And I wonder, and I think I never asked her, I should have asked her, but you could ask her something and to show you this is like, when I sent to Sheriff Stratton, and he replied, this is also what is damning about, and now it's about his reply, and I think he's a good guy, but that when he replied, okay, he replied, I'm writing to acknowledge the request. What's funny is, whenever I've sent a request to him or Leahy before, they're never going to reply without copying that Sheriff Public Records, because they're going to kick everything over to McKinsey, and I don't know if McKinsey's the only person there or not, I don't know who, but you have that email address for Sheriff Public Records. Sure. It's very odd that he didn't forward the request. If I had done this before on anything else, Chris hasn't been in office enough, but I did it with Leahy, and Leahy would have, if he replied, first off, he'd probably never reply. I would get a reply from Sheriff's Public Records, but if he did, he would send, I bet you can go find emails where he would have copied that function, and he probably would have said in the note, like, please send your emails, any record request to Sheriff's Public Record. Okay. So he didn't do that here. And I think he knows. If you listen to the 6-minute call with him, he knows. He knows this is basically a F. Chris Hicks thing. And it's wrong. It's not legal. It is a pristine example of this. Because you've got 10 elected officials. They all have records functions. I've called and talked to 5 or 6 of them where they've specifically, some of them haven't responded to me, like I called Tom Eigel, who's the county administrator, twice. He's probably never going to call me back to ask him about their public record policy, and have they ever tried to charge somebody for redaction. Gotcha. So that's that. I got this in here. And then the last thing I have here is, this is the actual public records statute, which has gotten unbelievably unwieldy, because the whole first part,
that's pretty substantial.
No, all of this, but almost all of it, up to a certain, like half of it, is definitions. Like, what's a medical record? What's a this? What's a that? It's all definitions. Then the actual meat of it, so I added this highlighting, it gets in part B. What are they, upon the request of any person, all public records responsible to request shall be promptly prepared. This gets through. Make charge request for actual costs associated with preparing a video record. I highlighted the part on body cams. This is brand new. This only April 9th is when that became part. Shall make available that is not exempt. The public office of the person responsible for the public record shall notify the requester of any redaction and make the redaction plainly visible.
Does it have any language in there about like emails, electronic communication?
There probably, but it's not. There's nothing in that. There's nothing in.
Just broadly.
Yeah, there's not a. But and then of course you have that Supreme Court case specific to email public records. So. And then him trying to cite a case that involves the Esri GIS mapping software for a county where somebody was trying to get it transformed into a different system. So it has nothing to do. And you email or not, just as an example, you guys would know because you've probably seen them, where you have like Mackenzie Clark, that she would have, I'd request a offense report or something, and it's going to be redacted in all kind of places. Sure. Nobody'd ever think. If I talked to her, she'd never think that I'm going to charge him. That's she's one of the calls on there. Hey, you ever try to charge somebody for doing the redaction? No, like what? Okay, and then by the way, the part in here is what cost can be included. Okay.
Hey, excuse me 1 second, Mr. Sparks.
Yes, sir.
Will you give me this report number, please?
Yes. Let me get it created real quick.
No, I've already got to see the complainant.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. It is 13 SO 25 00 14855.
14855.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. That's my business card with the report number.
Okay. All right. So that's, I think, everything. So you've got more if you're bored. I don't know how much you work weekend. You probably work all the time, but weekends or not. But you can read all about it.
I will review your documents. I will review the RC. I will take a report with all of your allegations in it.
I think the problem you're going to have almost immediately on this is that you guys are going to be conflicted out of it.
I'm gonna have to consult with the prosecutor first things first, considering.
No, on the, see, this is, the prosecutor is also gonna be conflicted out of this.
Right, I understand there's a lot of conflict.
So because I've named all the I've told you all the parties. In the past, just so you're aware, on the Jesse Kramig thing, this office engaged BCI. Okay, this notion, what's happened is you guys live in a world where the prosecutor's office makes everybody live in fear. It's a very dishonest office and tries to control things to prevent things from being properly handled. And so before anybody here goes to the prosecutor's office, I would just counsel them, because the prosecutor's a named person in this, and you guys have every ability to go to an outside agency on your own. Okay, you've done it before. So this has already been politicized. You've already got, when you listen to the audio on here of your boss, you'll know this is politicized. Because Chris is a good man, and he's basically got his nuts in a vice because of the idiot bill in the prosecutor's office. Because they've got him on a train with these other 10, horsemen of the apocalypse of the codependency of Clermont County politics, and it's just really unfortunate that he's gone along with it. I don't think Leahy would have gone along with it. I think Leahy would have just responded, because that's what he did in the past. He told me, when I get something that's a request I can answer, I just answer it. And so then I don't get any, by the time somebody comes and tells me politically I shouldn't have answered it, I can go and I'm like, I don't know. When I get a request from a constituent, if I can answer it, I answer it. And I'm sorry, I'm dumb, but that's what I do. Is that wrong? But now when you pause, you probably see this as, when somebody pauses, it's better to be honest from the beginning. You follow what I'm saying? Is once you pause, you probably get this when you interview somebody who's, I'm not a criminal, but you get what I'm saying is, like, as soon as they pause, then they as soon as they embellish their story or change the story, then they're in a constant and never-ending vortex of trying to keep it straight.
Certainly.
And that's what's happened here. And it starts with, why didn't he send that request to McKinsey? And then also listen to the audios. There's audios of all of them, including your boss, and they all know, your boss is the only elected official in an audio there, but these offices all have records policies, and they have people that normally handle their records. They don't go. Do you think that the municipal clerk, every time they fulfill a record request, that Brian Shrive has to sign off on it? They have their policies, and they have people that are paid to, I'm sure if it's sensitive, they do.
Yeah.
The only reason this is sensitive is because it's Chris Hicks. That's why it's sensitive.
I understand.
So, all right.
Is there anything else, sir?
No, sir.
All right. Well, thanks for
Appreciate
talking to me.
it. Appreciate it.